I think one of the interesting thing about this final is that once you've seen enough finals, big esports matches, you can just tell sometimes that it's just over from like halfway through the first game.
You can always see when the loser gives up mentally, can't you? You can just see it in the body language and everything.
I tweeted like halfway through game number 1 or at the end of game number 1 that Weibo had already lost this series before they even started it. I remember the first Overwatch League final when I was casting it out of the Barclays Center, the stadium in New York, and I just watched. It was between the Philadelphia Fusion and the London Spitfire. I watched the Philadelphia Fusion walk on stage, and I just turned to Doe and I said, "These guys have already lost this game. This is crazy." Just because you can tell by their body language and the lack of enthusiasm, dude. Weibo came in with no fucking strategies. It was wild to watch this final. Like, it's like they didn't even prepare. I started watching these drafts and I was like, really? Maokai first? That's where we're going? Like, did you not see any of the rest of this tournament? Yeah, Maokai's okay, but like, what the fuck are you guys actually doing right now? Did you miss the part where T1 just dismantles you with lane priority? So you come into game number 1 to first pick a fucking Maokai, which, by the way, guys, Owner can play Lee Sin, and Maokai is just absolute paper in the jungle early. Like, he's great in the late game if you can get there, but when you give all of the lane priority to T1 and they can invade with the Lee Sin, and you're going to pick Tahm Kench. So basically, first off, you pick blue side, and T1's been by far the best red side team in this tournament. Also true that T1 won all their blue side games this tournament, so you could say there's not really a good choice here.
On that one, sure.
Probably not a good option here. But the way that T1 drafted was just so intelligent because they saved their... Normally, we haven't seen the jungle pick save for R5. But we did see T1 pivot in the JDG series to picking earlier, but their bot lanes earlier on the red side and saving the R5 counter pick for Zeus. But this time around in game number 1, they hadn't seen the support. And you know what? They're down. They could pick Vi. They could pick Lee Sin. Vi, obviously terrible into Tahm Kench. You know what's really good into Tahm Kench? Fucking Lee Sin. Remember that owner guy who has like an 85% career win rate on Lee Sin? Well, Tahm Kench can't do much against Lee Sin because if he devours somebody, you both get kicked into the team. Or he kicks the target away from you where you could be devoured. Or he kicks the Tahm Kench away from the target he wants to be devouring. So there's not a lot of good options. But why the fuck are you trying to blind pick an Aatrox when you know he plays Yone? He played it in the semifinals, and he destroyed with it. Why are you doing this?
How mental this is, Monty.
Weibo, how did you beat BLG? Did you save R5 counter pick for the Shy? Oh, you did. Has the Shy been the best performing player on your roster? Well, fuck it. Let's pick blue side, and then let's get countered in every fucking lane anyway. Like, what the fuck was this preparation?
The Shy got counterpicked every single game top, even though, as we say, that was like the one player win condition you potentially had. Was like, not only you need the Shy to carry money, but you need to break Zeus's mental, so let's just give him counterpick all game. What? That's so mad, isn't it? I know, it's so mental, mate.
So let's get pushed in, and then let's have a Maokai that is just going to get his ass beat at level 3 by a Lee Sin as he just wanders freely in the enemy jungle. And by the way, guys, I want to put this out there right now. T1 didn't even really play well in these finals. If we're being honest.
It was a bit meh, yeah.
They played a lot better versus JDG. Faker, like, dying to that gank after they did the invade in the jungle, really bad. Like, really bad. There were a lot of moments where they gave up advantages that they should have had, and yet Weibo would just insist on throwing harder, or they would just draft themselves into absolute corners where there wasn't a good answer in the kind of mid and late game for what they were trying to do. Credit to T1. They came in and they just took Renata Glass no matter what. Carrie has been an awesome Renata Glass. I said in the last episode, guys, Crisp has only been good on Renata Glass. He's been running it down on a bunch of other champions. Guess what? Dude can't play Bard. But why are we even picking Bard? Thorin, why are we picking Bard in the first rotation of the draft on blue side? you hadn't even seen, they picked Bard before they had even seen jungle, top, or mid lane. Like, why it made sense for Beryl to pick Bard in the World Championship final last year in Game 5 was that there was a Victor and a Varus on the enemy team. They're low mobility champions. You don't pick it before they pick fucking Lee Sin and Akali. Like, what is going on with these drafts? They make absolutely no sense. They make no sense. You know what I mean? Why are we early picking Maokai in game number 2? You picked Maokai first last time because and then you banned the Sylas. Oh, well, let's just pick Maokai and fuck it. Let's let Faker have the Sylas, which he always picks into the Maokai in this tournament. So what is your strategy? Are you either picking the Maokai and banning the Sylas, or why are we suddenly picking the Maokai and giving Faker the Sylas? Why are we doing these things?
Because this was all part of a years-long intelligence operation by the Korean government, where Danny was the coach of T1, remember, last year, that made the 10-man roster, then got fired, but that was all part of his sleeper agent arc, where he went to Weibo Gaming, via which, in cooperation with BLG, they eliminated Gen G, the true threat to T1. And then, after getting to the final, they activated Agent Danny, or whatever his name is.
and Agent the Shy.
And then, yeah, basically, their incredibly patriotic gesture allowed Faker to win a 4th world. So in the end, T1 does win, after all.
Dude,
T1 does win.
Dude, the Korean plants were so deep at this tournament, by the way.
After all of that, Monty, it turns out after all that when they actually get that guy who was doing the draws and that's like a mask, like Mission Impossible, that's Bengi. Bengi was doing it the whole. He was the one putting Genji on the other side, seemingly easy bracket to lure them out. Oh, genius play.
I just don't get it, Thor. Like, I don't understand how you can continuously, like, you pick 3 games of blue side when your one win condition was giving Shy wacky ass counter pick matchups in top lane.
You'd think he'd at least hit one game. You know what I mean? Like give one game, and if it doesn't work, go back to just getting beaten on the other side. You know what I mean? Give one game.
Thorin, why when you see, so in game 3 they first pick Azir, right? Just to keep it away from Faker. Okay, fine, do that. Then you see T1 pick Zyra Khan. Now, be Weibo Gaming. You could at this point in time, if you want to pick your bot lane, just fucking play Caitlyn Lux. You can do that. We've seen it. Why are you playing Varus Bard before you see mid jungle top? Why are you doing this? And also, Chris can't fucking play Bard, as we saw. His early roams were okay, but holy shit. Oh, the Bard ults, man. The Bard ults are there to set up crowd control. You want to place them down so then the Kennen can come in. He was literally canceling ults on his own team. It was horrible. It was absolutely miserable to watch. This final was butt cheeks. It was awful. Like, it doesn't, like, they didn't even come in to win. If you told me that Weibo just got drunk all week, I would think the results would be the same. Now, this team was not prepared for fucking anything. Like, even like, fuck T1. Even in isolation, playing against any team in the world, their picks do not make sense.
Because sadly, they did what you actually hope the team on the other side of the bracket never do, Monty, which is they actually look like they just didn't believe the T1 read on the meta. Like, they either thought they could deal with this, or it's just fake, or the other teams that don't punish it correctly. Because I agree, none of these drafts make any sense, mate. It's mental.
We saw the meta develop, Thorin. We saw Weibo.
I mean, the only thing they essentially did correctly was they did force Faker off his champions, but it just turns out that's all they did. They didn't do anything else. Like, sure, you don't just win automatically.
It kind of worked. His RA looked pretty rough.
He did. He, like I said, this is why, by the way, that whole topic of like this probably needs to go. It's like, not really. Like, it's a great one for his legacy, but like, he didn't even carry the final. Like, that was Zeus, mate. What were we talking about?
Oh,
like,
and Owner.
Zeus got the fuck out of the shot. Oh, by the way, also, there's the other thing I forgot to mention earlier when I was going down the list of players. Dude, the Owner play against JDG that we talked about last week on Rel, that alone almost like deserves him to give a fucking chance to be in this team again. He's mega. Like, that was a fucking like tournament defining play. It was game 3. If JDG wins that game, maybe it's a 5-game series. Who knows, right?
So I would also argue that, I mean, I think for me, Owner was probably the MVP of the entire tournament. I thought his level
good.
was night and day compared to what we saw in summer. And I love all these T1 fans who come at you and are like, apologize for what you said about Owner. I'm like, no, Owner sucked, man. Can't we just appreciate that he actually played a lot better now? He was terrible there for a while if you were actually watching him. But
that's the thing I can't handle about the gaslighting. They act like he was doing this now the whole time, and we're just haters. Like Azor Monty, every single other international final, Owner was doing players like that rel play I'm talking about, and then we were just going, I'm just going to deny that happened. Like, it's actually fucking mental, the gaslighting. Like, the reason, I'll just stress it again, nobody hates T1 players. They hate dickhead T1 fans like you. That's who everyone hates. The only person in the whole scene we all hate. And the joke is even Faker probably hates you. We just can't say it for money reasons. You know,
he's too nice. He's too nice. Look, I think Faker did have a good Akali game. I thought, for the most part, he did his job. But you're right. Yeah. He wasn't the most spectacular member of his team. But here's the other thing about the finals. Owner actually had the hardest matchup because Weiwei was the only person playing human League of Legends on his entire team. Everybody else didn't show up on Weibo. And at least Weiwei was like kind of doing all right. For a lot of the finals. So Owner actually had the toughest matchup, and he still kind of styled all over him. It was,
by the way,
it was rough to watch.
One thing I do want to bring up, though, look, I know it's not the greatest timing now because this final was shit, but it's not even just that we had to wait a week for the final, Monty. There's only one match left in your entire circuit if you're Riot. And we can't have like proper shoulder content about the final. Think about this, Monty. They just get served narratives on a plate and they don't do anything with it. So you have, right, are you ready? Not only, this is the same narrative I set up for Knight, but it doesn't matter, it can apply to Xiaohu. No Korean mid laner and no Chinese mid laner has ever won Worlds. So when you're in the final, if you Riot, think about the smorgasbord or buffet you have of options on this, right? So you can do this, Monty. Either Faker wins his fourth, perfect if you Riot, or a Chinese mid laner wins Worlds for the first time, great storyline. Or how about this one? The guy who won 3 MSI titles versus the guy who might be about to win 4 Worlds. Like, there's a million fucking narratives. We didn't do anything with any of them. He didn't even do anything about the Shy. Like, bro, they're so fucking lazy at Riot. Like, I don't think people get it. I'm not joking. It really does take me half an hour on my end to do those videos that we do on our company, right? Look, obviously the editor might take a few days. That goes out saying. But, like, the idea Riot can't just put, like, 2 editors... Get like, by the way, they have people like Theon already. Just get someone like that. Tell them script a video for the finals. Like, where is the hype? Like, remember the only reason our industry survives is eyeballs. Like, get some more hype on the game. Come on, man.
What a missed opportunity it is to just to even create more Faker content. So first off, teams can't actually practice that much before the finals because a lot of the other teams are on break, right? So how about you go to the T1 facility, set up some cameras to make it as easy as possible for Faker, and you just do an hour-long interview, 1 hour, with Faker talking about his previous World Championship experiences, right? Talk about his 3 titles. Talk about the 2 that he's lost, right? Let's have an in-depth interview with Faker and just take an hour of his time. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it to do that. And what a hype piece that would be before the finals. I do think that the teasers they were doing with a lot of the players and the teams talking about each other and the storylines were very well done throughout Worlds. But I do think there definitely could have been more had they tried a bit harder.
But and obviously, by the way, I'll just point out, no one else has got this joke, Monty. This is exclusive just for you. I've crafted this one like a pearl, piece of sand inside an oyster. So you know when Faker said that line, because it's what the Golden Road and Knight and JDG walk in, then Faker said, all roads lead to me. That's because he's obviously a roaming mid, isn't he? He's a roaming mid. So that's a freebie just for you, mate. There you go. No one else got that one. Pretty free. Pretty free. Good tag. I'm here all week.
I think it was disappointing not to have more stuff though. When it comes,
people never get that. I know, but I'm fully aware that joke shit. That's what makes me laugh about it. I know it's not a good joke. That's why it's funny. If I even say it with a shit-eating grin, don't I? Don't even try to set it up. Come on, man.
But yeah, look, I think this final was really disappointing. It was such a walkover win
Oh, it
for
was garbage on it, I
T1.
know. There was no hype whatsoever in the whole match, was it? Like, by the way, all you needed, think about, because there are people like me and Tom who are like the T1 haters, like, all we need is a tiny spark to give us hope. There's nothing, like, the whole game's like, it's like, in fact, it was actually like trying to watch someone in camping when they don't know how to make a fire. It's like, nothing's going on at all. They're just rubbing two sticks together. Like, nothing's ever going to happen. I'm not getting a spark. It's like, you never will, mate. It's all damp and shit. Like, what are we going to do here? Like,
I just love Weibo just like throwing every advantage that they have. Game 3's looking competitive. They're up 2 Drakes, and then they just decide to fight for 3rd Drake for no reason. Just give it up, guys. Just walk the fuck away.
Here's another example, Monty, of why we say so many fucking times that we hate upsets. Here's why I hate upsets, Monty. Because since NRG beat G2, G2 didn't get into the playoffs. And then because G2 didn't get into the playoffs, NRG got to play Weibo, who hadn't beaten anyone Asian. So Weibo got to go to the semi-finals. Now, Weibo could never, ever beat Gen G. It would never happen in a million years. But they didn't have to play Gen G because BLG upset Gen G. So by some insane, like, diminishing returns of upsets, we ended up with BLG, one of the few teams potentially that could even make a semi that Weibo would have a chance against. And even then, they barely beat them by this much. So that as a result, in the final, T1 unironically got far and away the easiest match of the playoffs in the grand final. That's why I hate upsets, because what I just showed you there is that's the nightmare, where one upset leads to a bigger one, and eventually you get a scenario, like I say, where, like, let's be real. If before this tournament began, Monty, I told you the final is T1 against Weibo, you would actually assume Weibo must have had the craziest gloat performance. They didn't. Basically, like, the Shy was pretty good, Weiwei was all right, and like maybe Crisp had like an out of glass game. That's about it. Like, they weren't even that good in this tournament, Monty. That's the craziest thing. And also, it also did low key. Look, if you're T1, you take the win. Who gives a shit? Obviously, you're just there for the title. But to actually make it satisfying, the best result would have been either Gen G, because T1's lost them, or BLG for the rematch of getting the revenge from MSI. Like, those would have been potentially banger games. It would be an awesome narrative too. The actual narrative of beating Weibo was kind of shit in the end, wasn't it? It kind of just was a whatever, like I say. That's also why I hate upsets, though, like I say, because they just ruin future matches, unfortunately.
Well, and it's also true that Weibo just had insane variance throughout the year. One week they would, beat JDG in a best of 3, and then they would just lose to some shitters. Like, their form has been really inconsistent, which is why I think a lot of people who routinely watch the LPL were very wary about them being in the finals, because you just knew that they were going to turn back into a pumpkin at some point in time, and it was very unlikely they were going to be able to sustain a run throughout the entirety of the playoffs. It was kind of amazing they made it as far as they did, but they certainly did not look remotely competitive in the finals. And I think, frankly, their strategy just going in was completely wrong. Like, sometimes you see in the earlier stages of Worlds, before the meta has developed, those kind of reads that just fall really flat. But to see it in the finals, when you know exactly what T1 has been doing for the last several series, is very weird.
Think about how mad this is, though, Monty. The only Asian team that Weibo Gaming beat at Worlds, and they made it to the final, was BLG. That's it. Isn't that mental when you think about it? That's impossible, isn't it? How can that be? How the fuck is that even possible? What the fuck is this?
It's so crazy. My new favorite narrative, though, now, Thorin, is just to be obnoxious, is saying that we don't live in the age of LPL because 3 of the last 4 world champions have been Korean teams. Because, look, that narrative has been kind of weirdly persistent, right? Where it's kind of changed over time. So obviously MSI has been enormously successful for Chinese team, but who gives a shit about the best tournament format? It's still technically the second most important tournament of the year. But you saw a lot of these narratives where it'd be like, oh yeah, well, 3 Korean teams make the semifinals, but the Chinese team is the one that actually wins out, and therefore LPL is the best region, even though Korea has actually been much more consistent in terms of getting teams out into higher brackets and stages of the tournament. And now you're dealing with a situation where we've only had one LPL Worlds team win in the last 4 years. So if anything, it's looking like things were a lot closer than a lot of people were saying previously.
I mean, let's be real. Even if like JDG had won this year, it doesn't mean that even though like on paper people had BLG or LNG as the second best team, no one would really know until they played the matches. Like actually, that's another sad reason why it's only T1 that beat them. Like there's a lot of matchups. This is why the lower bracket would have been the shit of this tournament. There's so many storylines you wish you saw that you never got to see. Like what happens if like KT plays against pick your team BLG or something like that in a best of 5? Who the fuck knows, right? There's so many matchups we could have made.
Yeah. Plus, Gen.G would have got another shot, which I desperately wanted to see. I think KT was kind of cooked by the end. Similarly to Weibo, they just seem kind of done and not really interested in competing anymore. It's kind of the read I got from them, but I would have liked to have seen
as well. I definitely need to see that JDG low bracket match because they actually looked like I said, that's why the actual fucking like Faker play in game 3 was epic and the Oda play. Because if JDG wins that game, they already in game 3, game 4 were in positions where it's like, hey, they're starting to like look like the old JDG. They might start taking over now. So like I don't know if any other team beats them. I want to see them play against Gen.G or we want to see all the matches we wanted. We never got to see any of them.
Yeah, I still think that T1 probably comes out on top of this tournament. It just felt like they had all the answers to everything and that the meta had drifted away from JDG and they couldn't necessarily rely on the kind of classic front-to-back team fighting because T1 was basically playing a very high-pressure, fast early game that was based around picks. And this is the way that they played in spring. It's the way they played last year. And the meta just kind of went perfectly into their wheelhouse. It was very lucky, I think, for T1, because if we had seen the meta that dominated most of summer, there's no question in my mind that JDG would have won this tournament. And even if the meta had persisted from the early stage of Worlds.
If someone watching now is one of those Western plebs who just tries to say every year that Knight and Chovy choke, therefore they weren't actually ever good players, all I'm going to say is this: by your own logic, Bjergsen was dog shit. So take that home to the bank with you and pop that in. But what about the else? No, we don't count domestic leagues. It's only about Worlds. Sorry, that's all that counts. By the way, Knight won MSI this year, but we're just going to pretend he's shit. Oh, brilliant. Okay, guess he's trash then. My bad. Like, is this his fault? Belveth had to the fucking game repeatedly. By the way, that one still does win. The ultimate, I know what we need to do, right? Obviously, Dade awards sometimes don't get awarded now. We need like double agent of the year because like fucking hell, the competition was strong this year, but I think that Kanavi wins it. I think Kanavi's Belveth performance wins double agent of the year because dude, that's like those NBA refs back in the day where like if they had to rig a game, like sometimes it gets out of control. You have to really blatantly rig it and give one team like 60 free throws. Like, dude, he hit it about 3 times in that game. Like that one where he went like through the mystical journey. I was just like, no, you know what? That is
yes,
so
when he went through the Bard portal. I actually think that one was.
That looked like match fixing or something, didn't it? That looked crazy, mate. What the fuck was that?
That one was more unforgivable, or that one was actually more forgivable than him walking into those sand soldiers at Dragon and just dying
the Dragon pit. Yeah,
because like I understand you could just misclick on a Bard ult, even though you should know that Bard's going to throw a portal there, right, and anticipate it. But when you're literally just sitting there at your monitor and intentionally like moving into 3 sand soldiers and just getting autoed to death.
Plus, everyone forgets in that game, I'm pretty sure earlier he even had one where he like survived on 1 HP as well. So it's like, mate, he was just in the fuck out of that game. It was crazy.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.